Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Gilles Gallant. I'm joined by Evan Abrams each and every week. He filled in for me for week 17 and 18. Did an amazing job, but now we are back together and we are going to dive into the Sunday NFL action for week 18. We're also going to look ahead to wildcard weekend and all of the finalized playoff matchups. Brandon Anderson, he'll join us a little bit later for the hot read, and then Patrick Everson from Vegas Insider. He'll give us a market report, on how sportsbooks in Vegas fared in Week 18. But first, Evan, we got to go right to Sunday Night Football. We got to talk Bills-Dolphins now because the ripple effects of this game. Initially, I thought this one was going to have a ton of trickle-down effect, but the Jaguars completely took a shot on the field pretty much. So that pretty much put a wrench into all of that, where the Bills probably didn't need to have the game now to get their playoff spot clinched. But Bills-Dolphins, 21-14 win for the Bills. Total does go under a 48.5. The Bills, as 3-point favorites, do cover, but the Bills win the AFC East, Evan, fourth straight year. And to be honest, if you think about back when we were doing the pod after week 12, when they were 6-6, it just seems kind of improbable to me that they won 5 games in a row since that Eagles loss. And here we are now, where I legit thought, I was texting you off air. I thought Josh Allen was going for the interception lead, not the AFC East title before we were, 2 early interceptions. He has 19 now on the year. And the first half injuries just piling up. Gabe Davis left. Rasul Douglas, who was arguably their best player in their secondary. And, I thought we'd start to see the Bills kind of slowly fade from the injuries. But if anything, it was the Dolphins that started to fade there in the second half.
To be honest with you, I kind of think this all started with the Titans game. The collapse and the loss. Buffalo was as high as 16-1 to win the AFC East earlier in the season.
Incredible.
And it's weird to say, but Buffalo's looked good, but I don't think they look incredibly dominant. They have tons of injuries, probably an equal amount when you go all the way back now to Miami, who literally every play, it feels like they lose 2 players per play. So that feels like what's going on there. So I think Miami's just glad the game's over. And now they do have to go to Kansas City, which this is noteworthy, right? So the choice here was they win the game and they play in 74-degree weather. They lose the game and they play in 0-degree weather. So the loss pretty difficult, especially when you think about what the road is now for them, right? Because it's probably Kansas City, then Baltimore, and then maybe Buffalo or something of that nature. Not great for Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. And the injuries, I think, was a key thing to bring up because they were losing guys left. Van Ginkel left with a foot injury. Yeah. But even the Bills, too, like Gabe Davis left in the first half. Rasul Douglas, he was AFC Defensive Player of the Week last week. He was probably their best player in the secondary, and he left at halftime. But I think you were right, though, Evan. Neither defense really seemed to be sharp because even in the first half, even though there were some interceptions early from Josh Allen, 2 picks from him, 1 pick from Tua, they still had over 400 combined yards just in the first half. But it was the Bills, again, that slow start. Fewest points scored in the first half since week 9. They were able to get a little bit of luck there with a special teams touchdown to regain that momentum. But this Dolphins offense, Evan, we don't have to go too hard on a talking head kind of idea here. But again, this is just an observation from me about the Dolphins. For a team that led the NFL in points per game, has the passing yards leader in Tua Tagovailoa, has the receiving yards leader in Tyreek Hill, has the co-touchdown leader in Raheem Mostert, they got a lot of offensive duds this year. When you look at their full resume of teams they've played, there's a lot of games where that such innovative, creative offense that we always praise Mike McDaniel for, it's not matchup proof. Like we saw a dud against the Ravens. Last time they played Kansas City, it was a dud. The Eagles, the Bills in week 3. Again, they're not matchup proof. So am I out of turn here in saying that I think the Dolphins offense is a bit overrated?
I think you're fine saying it. I think it depends on where they're playing. I think it depends on if everyone's healthy. You saw a Miami team today that was kind of decimated. Without Waddle and Mostert, it's a completely different team. Tyreek Hill is Tyreek Hill, but he even looked kind of hobbled at points. So the way I kind of looked at it while watching this game, Miami wanted this game to end. They did a lot of different things to try to win the game at different points. They were even winning at certain points, but it just felt like they're just the walking wounded. So it's just really hard for me to try to grade Miami's offense at this point. I just know that they're going to face a Kansas City team now that has very similar issues, right? Their offense isn't running. They're not doing great things. So I think the matchup isn't absolutely terrible aside from the fact they're playing in 0-degree weather, which, historically for Miami, I tweeted this out, 8-19 straight up last 20 years, sub 40 degrees, and Tua stinks on the road versus winning teams, 2-9 straight up. So not the best spot for them, but I've been fading Kansas City all year. So to me, this is it's a difficult handicap, to be honest with you.
One last note before we go on to the playoffs. I just want to make one last point about the Dolphins offense, because of course those games that I just referred to, like there's circumstance, context, injuries, I get that. But here we are in a put up, shut up moment here. Minute 53 left, chance to tie it. Tyreek goes up for a catch, gets hurt, leaves the field. Next play, Tua throws a pick. So when you were talking about there just a second ago, Tua stinking on the road, this isn't, and again, the other thing too, the Bills secondary, they're good, but I think Kansas City's secondary is way better from a DVOA perspective. They're
Completely
top
agree.
5, and so they're going to be having some issues, especially with Tyreek going for his nice little Kansas City homecoming. I think that will be really fun to watch. But let's talk about those playoff games now. So Dolphins Chiefs. That's going to be on Saturday, January 13th. That's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern, the nightcap game. Chiefs now opened up as 3.5-point favorites. Actually, they opened up at 3. It's already moved to 3.5 with the over-under of 45. But on the other side now, as a result, the Bills, the 2 seed now in the AFC, they're going to be hosting the Steelers on Sunday, January 14th. They're going to be the opener on that day at 1 p.m. Eastern. And the Bills, their spread moved fast. Like they were at 7-point favorites, 8.5. I'm seeing 9.5s out there right now at the total of 42.5. What kind of observations are you seeing here from these two games based on the spreads and what we're seeing so far just with early action?
Yeah, I'll toss a few things out here. So I'm already seeing Bills at 11 at certain
Oh
places.
my God. Yeah. So
I
that's
think,
how quickly it moved since
yeah.
that was like 5 minutes ago of recording.
Yeah, I think that's going to fly. I think that's going to be at least double digits. And it's worth noting because I just quickly looked it up. Double-digit spreads playoffs, 13-9 straight up for favorite. Against a spread, I'm sorry, for favorites last 20 years. So not awful. So these teams usually double-digit favorites for a reason. And an interesting handicap because Pittsburgh probably shouldn't be in the position that they're in. They probably got pretty lucky. And then let's take a step back for a second. So you've got McCarthy versus the Packers, Stafford versus the Lions. You've got the Deshaun Watson Bowl because you've got the Texans versus the Browns, and then you've got Tyreek versus the Chiefs. I
Couldn't
mean,
have scripted it
pretty
better.
good. Yeah, this is a pretty good setup here. I think we've got a fun wild card weekend ahead, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But then you give the Eagles the rest they need, potentially. So doing maybe a favor for Philadelphia, but it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be some good games.
Well, it's good to refer to as well when the Dolphins and Chiefs played, because they did play in Germany earlier this year. And I think that's important because people will look at the game log and they'll think, they must have played in Arrowhead. Like, no. They were playing in Germany. Chiefs were 1.5-point favorites, but the total was closer to about 50. We're seeing about 45 now, starting to see some of those offenses regress, like you had mentioned about how the Chiefs are struggling offensively to even manufacture any points, let alone, and then also their defense has been pretty good too. From a Bills-Steelers perspective, again, I like the fact that the Steelers might be able to move the ball down the field with Mason Rudolph and that offense, but wow, like their defense, I think, is going to be in trouble, especially if TJ Watt isn't playing.
It's a lot of points for Mike. Like just off the bat, that's a hefty amount of points for Tomlin. No matter the situation, and the thing that's funny about it, like historically, Josh Allen tends to win games by a lot of points.
At home too, yeah.
Yeah, especially at home. But the handicap's tough because the handicap's got to be, can Pittsburgh score any points to be able to stay in the game with Buffalo in that sense. So we'll see, but large spread, and I wouldn't be shocked if it got a little bit higher.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll monitor that throughout the week. Make sure to go to actionnetwork.com. You can check all the line movements, previews. We're going to have touchdown. We're going to have full coverage of every game for Wildcard Weekend on actionnetwork.com. All right, now let's move to, depending on your viewpoint, arguably the biggest disappointment of the day, the way the Jaguars just completely laid a turd on the field against the Titans today. So as a result, the Jaguars lose, or we could spin it, the Titans win 28-20 with the total of 42.5 going over, but the Jags is 3.5-point road favorites. Do not cover. Evan, what an implosion, man, because that might be one of the worst disaster finishes to a season I can remember in the NFL.
Yeah, and even to put it into context, so the Jacksonville Jaguars started 8-3. They finished 9-8, and they missed the playoffs. Only one other team has done that in the last decade. That's the 2021 Ravens. So, starting 8-3 and missing the playoffs.
Lamar missed time.
Yeah, and for that, it's an injury. I believe it's the fourth time in the last 30 years that a team has started 8-3 and missed the playoffs. It's an absolute collapse, and it's also the second time in 3 years that we've gotten to this point where Jacksonville really needed to show up in a situation, and now Jacksonville folklore, Carson Wentz and Ryan Tannehill. It's a pretty bad situation. And then you kind of have to flip it around just for a half second here with Tennessee. Derrick Henry, 19 for 153 on the ground, his most rushing yards since October of last year. Welcome back and goodbye. It was a nice farewell, and he did his job. Yeah, he did his job, and he did really, really good for all us Tennessee bettors. So thank you.
Well, the one thing I was going to mention too is the Jaguars, where they were from a AFC South perspective, because
crazy
from week 13 onward, it's just a nightmare sequence for the Jags. Like prior to the Bengals game with that Lawrence ankle injury where he's basically being carried out by security, the Jags are minus 800 to win that division. Texans are around 8-1. Kudos to Brandon Anderson, by the way, for picking the Texans preseason to win the division. But they go 1-4 the rest of the way. The one game they do win, CJ Beathard started. So,
and also, to be fair, since that injury, 7 touchdowns, 7 picks for Lawrence. He wasn't the same quarterback.
Thank you for that, because this sets me up. This is a bit of a talking head question, but I'm watching the game. I found myself asking myself, is Trevor Lawrence good? Like, is he good? Like, and again, like there's a lot of chosen one, promised land, like Andrew, best quarterback prospects since Andrew Luck, all that kind of stuff, all that talk, right? And
sure.
The first year you almost don't even want to blame it on him because of the Urban Meyer experiment. Last year they got hot near the end of the year. They had that really encouraging win over the Chargers, and then the Chiefs. They played the Chiefs tough, but just that's the way it goes. But wow, for a team, man, that was like 8-3 at one point, this is just like an epic collapse that had ripple effects throughout the entire conference. It kind of took some of the drama out of the Bills and Steelers results as well, because once they lost, both of those teams basically knew they were in after that. So yeah, when I watched that game, I was just like, I cannot believe that at the beginning of the year, I thought the Jags could have the best seed in the AFC. Now, obviously, with Trevor Lawrence, I think one thing I will just say, obviously, he was dealing with a shoulder injury, dealing with an ankle injury, looked really good up until that ankle injury. Maybe they can carry over some of that momentum from what they got halfway through the year. But if they start off slow again next year, especially with this collapse, Doug Peterson is getting booted. Like, there's no way that you can keep him along the ride of watching that collapse. And then if they start off slow again, and what will probably be a more competitive AFC South, as long as CJ Stroud is continuing to play that he's played, because wow, CJ Stroud, rookie, the Texans win the AFC South. We'll go to the Saturday game now. The Texans win 23-19. Now the total of 47.5 does go under, but that's not even close to the story for this game, because, again, the Texans do cover as 1.5-point favorites, and they're going to now host the Cleveland Browns, the Deshaun Watson Bowl, as Evan has referred to, in the wildcard round. That's going to be on Saturday, January 13th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And the Browns, they opened up as slight favorites, about 1.5. It's now moved up to 2.5. The over-under at 43.5 for this game. And now, Evan, I poached this stat from you, so I just wanted to cite it and just at least attribute it to you. But again, Stroud has made 14 starts in his NFL career. He's 5-2 against the spread as an underdog. And in the first half, and we saw this with that quick opening strike to Nico Collins, 6-1 against the spread as a dog now in the first half for CJ Stroud.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked unbelievable. And it's kind of interesting. Listen, the handicap here, when you look at it, especially from probably the public's point of view, you have a rookie quarterback playing in his first playoff start against a guy who probably couldn't have more experience. So, I mean, that's the first handicap you might look at in this situation. It's interesting from Houston's point of view. So an 0-2 team has now made the playoffs in 8 of the last 11 seasons. So a nice little note for next year, because usually those teams will get a nice little bump in odds, and it usually ends up happening as early in the year. So that's a fun one. And looking forward, since 1990, rookie quarterbacks, 11-18 straight up in the playoffs, 4-11 straight up with the last decade. Now, the most recent one, Brock Purdy, did okay. Obviously got hurt. That all got derailed.
All
So,
right.
yeah, did okay. But historically, a tough spot. And I think the other fun angle, honestly, is Houston, right? 200-1 in the preseason. So anyone who even has even close to that type of ticket is kind of on for a fun ride here and on for a fun home playoff game. So that's great.
Well, another ticket that would have been hilarious, I didn't see anybody have it, would have been having Andrew Beck for a touchdown at 13-1, because now Andrew Beck, the fullback for the Texans, scoring that touchdown is now the most profitable anytime touchdown scorer of the season, which is just amazing considering all the players in this offense that can get it going. The fact that Nico Collins, again, he'll have 9 catches for 195 yards. Again, that 75-yard touchdown on the first play just kind of really set the tone in that game. And also, you brought up many times on this show, like how Colts are a bit stinky, like a little bit fraudish, just especially when you got Gardner Minshew, a quarterback. Now, the one thing I will say, I got into it a little bit online just as far as the discourse about that fourth down play call, because for me, I wasn't as mad about the play call, but it's just, you're going to do a fourth down play call of a screen pass to end the game to your third string running back. And you could say, well, he had it in his hands if he had caught it. Well, Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss were literally getting 5 yards of freaking carry, man, all the way down the field. Run the damn ball. Gardner Minshew is your quarterback, for sakes. Like, just run the ball. That's all they had to do. And instead, they try to get too cute. I think they could have won that game potentially. Again, it's easy, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But for me, dude, that thing just really bugged me about the way that we are kind of praising how the Colts were on their up and up. And then this is what your play call comes down to: play of the year, game, season on the line. And that's your play call. I didn't agree with it.
I don't want to spend too much time here. I thought about it first before the game about how much that game was worth to Gardner Minshew. Like, is it a $10 million contract? Is it a $20 million contract? Like, if he throws 3 touchdowns, Colts make the playoffs, like, how much do we forget that he was an inaccurate interception throwing, quarterback all season? Who knows? It didn't happen. Doesn't really matter, because honestly, the pass was off target to Goodson. There's a reason it probably wasn't caught. It was kind of short. The play call is what it is. You take Taylor and Moss off the field, and I think he said it was, part of the play sheet, right? It was third down. It's a type of situation where those guys aren't on the field normally. I think he just got in his head. Like, just run the damn ball, like you said, but let's move on. Colts aren't in the playoffs anyway, right? So they're done.
Yeah. So we don't have to talk about the Colts anymore. And I won't get that animated anymore about that until we talk about Atlanta. But Steelers, Ravens, we don't have to talk about this game too much, other than the fact that the Steelers did clinch by winning 17-10. They did cover as 3.5-point favorites in a rain monsoon of a game. The total does go under of 34.5. But that Mike Tomlin road under trend, dude, is one that I'm really monitoring for this Bills game that they're going to be playing, because Mike Tomlin road unders over the last decade, 57, 27, and 1, just around 68% hit rate. But the Steelers voodoo, I think, is probably going to end in Orchard Park at this point, man, because I don't think people understand how much of an impact TJ Watt is on this offense and how much of a pass rush that he generates from his side of the line. And it's going to be a big loss for them. I mean, they have other guys like Highsmith who can really make an impact every once in a while, but that motor from Watt, especially with the way that the mobility of Josh Allen, not having him, if the Steelers were to pull off this win, it might be the best win of Mike Tomlin's career. I'll just put that out there right now as like a signed, sealed approval from me. But now, final game of AFC North. I just want to talk about this one real quick. Is just Browns Bengals, where the Bengals win 31-14. The total of 37 does go way over, and the Bengals cover 7.5-point favorites. I just wanted to give the Bengals a little bit of flowers for still trying. And I think the reason why I say that is because they finished 9-8, despite all of the Burrow drama that we have seen of, is he going to play? What's with his calf? Is it a wrist? And, Higgins is likely gone in the offseason, so there's another weapon that they're likely going to lose. But I just wanted to give and acknowledge the Bengals for at least trying in the final week and really just having that winning record. And also to acknowledge the AFC North because awesome stat. First time since 1935 that a division has had all 4 teams finish over 500, and very well done seasons by each team in the AFC North. All right, now it's time for the hot read from our own Brandon Anderson. Brandon, what do you have us looking at for early wildcard weekend lines?
All right, let's do a little playoff hot read. Hot read went 29-1 in the regular season, 69% hit rate. Nice. Already grabbed Bills -7.5 at the open. Hope you trailed that one on Twitter. Already catching some -10s in the market out there now. Let's go right ahead to Sunday Night Football. Rams at the Lions. Give me the underdog. Give me the Rams +3.5. We got all sorts of juicy storylines here. We got Matt Stafford back to Detroit to face his old team. We're going to get Ben Johnson and Sean McVay just dialing up heaters. Awesome plays all game long. And of course, Jared Goff against his old team too. Don't forget about that. They're the ones that got rid of Jared Goff and won a Super Bowl without him. And I think that's a key matchup here. Total's already 51 and climbing. We're expecting a lot of scoring here. And I think on one side, that's right. The Rams are going to score. The Rams have been the number 2 offense in football second half of the season, behind only the 49ers. And Lions defense is not stopping anyone lately. So Matt Stafford, he's going to have a good game. Kyron Williams is running the football well. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. These guys are going to just have a big game. Like the Rams' last 6 games before Sunday when they rested most of their starters, 31.3 points a game, at least 26 points in every game. Maybe just the team total over here if you want that. But I think the Rams are going to put up the points. They've won 7 out of 8 games since the bye week. The only loss that they had was against Baltimore, the team that is number 1 in every power rankings, and that was in overtime too. So the Rams pushed them all the way. I'm not sure about the other side though. Will the Lions score? Will they keep up? Rams have been top 10 run defense over this back half of the stretch, and Aaron Donald, we know he's good. The rookie Kobe Turner, I think they can get after it a little bit against that Detroit interior offensive line. They've had some injuries, it's a bit softer there. And I think, too, this is where we're going to see why the Rams traded Goff into Stafford in the first place. Nobody knows better than the Rams how to beat Jared Goff. I think Raheem Morris is going to have some nasty stuff dialed up on how to get after Goff's weak spots. We also saw the Lions try hard on Sunday, and it might cost them Sam Laporta, the rookie tight end in this matchup. Maybe Khalif Raymond, too. They don't have a ton of weapons. The Rams have better weapons. They got the better quarterback. And then 2 trends I love here. In the wild card round only, home teams that just won by 10 or less. Detroit won by 10 on Sunday. Those teams are 17, 30, and 3 against the spread. 36% cover rate. That's Detroit. And home teams this round that missed last year's playoffs. Just 13, 29 against the spread. 31% cover rate. You want to grab this now. Rams +3.5. You want the hook here. Detroit has already 5 wins this season by under 7. So even if the Rams don't win, they might still get the cover here. So Rams +3.5, Sunday Night Football in Detroit. And then second hot read, let's go to the finale of the weekend, the ugly one. Let's go to Monday Night Football. Give me a gross Monday night. Eagles at Buccaneers under 45. Like we saw this matchup already. Back in week 3 is 25-3 till we got a late Tampa Bay touchdown. Dominant Philly game. Looked a lot like a year ago where Philly dominated time of possession. They almost doubled them up there. 2.5 times as much yardage. Obviously, these are not the same Eagles since then, but the Eagles should dominate the trenches. Buccaneers do not have a good run game. They run mostly up the middle. That's the one area where Philly's defense has remained strong, stopping that middle run. So I think that's going to neuter Buccaneers offense a little bit. Buccaneers offense has not been good at home, much worse home than on the road. 25th by DVOA entering Sunday versus 10th on the road. They have not been good on early downs. They're not good early in the game. Philadelphia's defense, we know that's the story, right? That they are cratering. I don't know if the Buccaneers can take advantage here. Mike Evans and Godwin, they'll make some plays against the secondary, but I don't know if they'll do enough. And on the other side, Buccaneers defense, pretty solid, right? They've been at 10th to 15th in most metrics for the season. And Philadelphia's offense really hasn't been as strong as it used to be. The offense is mostly built around the pass, but if you look at Jalen Hurts against Todd Bowles, this has not been a good matchup for our guy Jalen Hurts. 3 games he's played against Todd Bowles' defense, only 3 passing touchdowns in those 3 games combined, and 5 interceptions, at least 1 pick in every game, under 55% completion rate, 217 yards a game. Just not kind to Jalen Hurts. For whatever reason, he has not been able to solve this Todd Bowles defense. Todd has had some answers. So a lot of trends to like here. Tampa Bay unders went 11-6 on the season. Obviously, we got 9 points in the Buccaneers game on Sunday. Home underdog unders, we talked about that all season. We got a primetime under here on Monday night. We know about that one. And then a wild card around trend. Outdoor unders, this will be outdoors, in non-division games at 41 or above. Those games are 29-9 to the under, 76%. So what do I love about this one? What did we see on Sunday? We saw a lot of injuries from these teams, right? Jalen Hurts looked like he busted his finger. A.J. Brown left hurt, did not return. Devontae Smith was already out. I'm assuming these guys are going to play. It's the playoffs, but we don't know how they're going to be. Baker Mayfield, he was a question mark for the game. He was limping around out there. He's clearly not right. Again, these guys will play, but you never know what injury news we could get. And really, we never know if these guys will finish the game. And any one of those guys missing can really only help the under for us because there's just not a lot of weapons anyway. So I like the under here. I think that we can hit it any number of ways. Either one of these teams could just really lay an egg offensively. So we get a lot of paths to get to the under. And, you know, we've been playing these NFC South unders all season with the Bucs and all their friends in the division. Honestly, at this point, the Eagles are so mid, they might just be an honorary NFC South team at this point anyway. So let's stick with what's been working. And this is a key spot. You want to grab it now. 45, 44.5 if you need it. 40, 41, 43, 44. Those are all key numbers. That's like the most important range for totals. And I think this one's going to keep moving down. You never know if we get any weather factor or injury news. So you want to grab this above that whole range and get the under 45, 44.5 if you need it. So that is our picks for wildcard weekend. Sunday Night Football, Rams plus 3.5 at the Lions. And then a Monday Night Football prime time under to close the weekend. Eagles and Bucks under 45. Playoffs, baby. Let's have some fun.
All right, thank you, Brandon. All right, now let's move to the NFC East, where the Cowboys win the NFC East with a convincing win over the Commanders, 45-10. The Cowboys cover is big, 13-point favorites. The over does hit as well. No team has won this division back-to-back seasons since, I believe, 2005. So that, to me, just the fact that Cowboys were able to get the division win just showed that maybe at the start of the year that maybe the Eagles weren't necessarily a lock the way that their fan base might describe. But now, with that win over the Commanders, we don't have to talk about the Commanders really much anymore, other than just acknowledge that Sam Howell led the NFL in interceptions and cost me a Josh Allen NFL interception lead ticket. But that's neither here nor there, because we're going to talk about now Packers-Cowboys. Cowboys are going to be hosting the Packers at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, January 14th. Cowboys at 7.5-point favorites with an over-under of 49.5. And there's a lot of trends that will support the Cowboys and Dak Prescott in the spot, even as a 7.5-point favorite. Dak Prescott is at home. I mean, he's 37-7 straight up, 31-12-1 against the spread as a favorite of 6 points or more. When he's a 6-point favorite at home, he's 19-9-1 against the spread. So the one thing that I will just say, though, is I'm a little, as a Cowboys fan, I'm a little nervous about the Packers coming to Dallas. And the reason being is Jordan Love has kind of started to impress me, especially If you look at Jordan Love's game logs over the last 8 games, dude, he's got 18 touchdowns and only 1 interception. And the Packers are 6-2 straight up in those games. They make the playoffs, obviously, in the first year without Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, I think the big takeaway here is we know what the Cowboys can do when they're big favorites, and they could do that. But at the same time, it's interesting to see where the Packers are going to be from an injury standpoint. If we're going to be back to full health, where the Cowboys and Packers are going to be able to see a full healthy roster against each other here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here. Over a touchdown feels a little inflated. I'm kind of interested in Green Bay at over the number. I'll lay a few things just on this game from my notes. Just one thing from Washington. So Howell threw 21 interceptions and got sacked 65 times. No one's ever done that. Most sacks with 20-plus picks was John Kitna in 2006. That got broken today by Howell. So this was a season among seasons for this guy. I hope if he gets another chance, it's a different situation, because 21 plus 65 is 86, and that's just a lot of craziness.
Well, they do have the second overall pick now. So, yeah. I mean, if they're in love with Drake May or maybe Michael Penix Jr. from Washington, or whoever the quarterback du jour is that's not Caleb Williams, they'll have a shot at it, or maybe even potentially the Bears. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Maybe they decide they're going to ride this Justin Fields roller coaster for another year, trade back and get some picks, maybe get some more from the Commanders. A lot can happen here for the Commanders from a quarterback standpoint. But correlation with the Packers-Cowboys game, because Packers-Cowboys, as a Cowboys fan, I have a little bit more of PTSD just of the Packers with Aaron Rodgers coming in. I'm not going to say that Jordan Love is on Aaron Rodgers' level. I'm just saying there's some history there. So I'm a little nervous, especially given how Jordan Love has looked in the second half of the season to be able to rally.
I will say this as well. I will say this. So Dallas is 3-12-1 ATS in the playoffs since 97. Dak is 1-5 against the spread himself in the playoffs. McCarthy's coached 7 home playoff games as a favorite, 4-3 straight up, 3-4 against the spread. This is just... Listen, they play well in the regular season. They cover all these games. They do well. When it comes to the playoff time, historically, it just tends to go the other way. So over a touchdown feels interesting for a Green Bay team that has almost nothing to lose. All kids, all entering this game in a situation they've never been in, that they might just play and have fun and score some points. So we'll see how it goes, but I think it's a little scary.
Yeah, definitely. So anything over a 7.5, I think is a healthy number, but that number may come down as we get closer to kickoff. But Eagles Giants, just as a correlation with this, where the Giants win 27-10 today, beat the Eagles outright as 4.5-point favorites. The under of 43 also hits. And the Eagles are just limping into the playoffs, Evan. Dropped 5 of their last 6 games. They fall to the wild card at 11-6, where it seemed like they had after that Bills game, it seemed like they had the NFC East wrapped up. And just the way that the injuries have piled up, especially with, it just started bad and it just kept getting worse as the game was going on, because entering the game, they didn't have DeAndre Swift. Devontae Smith had crutches, is walking around. Then Darius Slay was also out, but then A.J. Brown gets hurt. And then Jalen Hurts kind of breaks his finger on his throwing hand, and they're down 24-0 at half. So I think the one thing that I would say, though, is they are getting to play the Buccaneers in the opening round, and they might have been given maybe like a little bit of a mini gift by being able to get the Monday game instead of being on Sunday, like the Cowboys were. So now they're going to be playing Monday, January 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern. A little extra day there for some injury rest.
I think the rest is also big for Tampa. Baker did not look healthy whatsoever. He's hobbling around trying to make it to the first down line on that late one. He just did not look healthy, so he could use the day himself. Agree there. I think it's worth some context on Philadelphia. So Philly's lost 5 of 6. They started 5-0, started 10-1, finished 11-6. Just unbelievable kind of fail at the end of the season. Since the NFL switched to a 16-game season, 2 teams who started 10-1 ended the year with 12 wins or less. 1986 Jets, 2023 Eagles. I mean, it's a collapse we really haven't seen ever. So going into this game, I think it is a good matchup. It's the reason the spread's kind of tight, right? I think we don't know from a health point of view who the heck's going to be playing in this game. So it's a little difficult overall. So I don't think there's much of a handicap here for me. And then one note on the other side, Giants finished the season 8-8, 8-1 against the spread, 6-1 ATS in their last 7. So they were feisty, and if you gambled on them late, you cashed some tickets.
Absolutely. And I mean, Tyrod Taylor is infinitely better than whatever Tommy DeVito was putting on the field. But I just want to mention one more thing about the Eagles, because it really looked like they waved the white flag by halftime when they benched Jalen Hurts. Now, I think Jalen could have kept playing if it was a do or die game kind of thing. But in the second quarter, they were outgained 181 yards to 0 at one point, man. And now they've got the Bucs here coming up. And I know the Bucs aren't a tough matchup. They beat them pretty easily. I think earlier in the year, there was a little bit of a garbage time touchdown at the end from Mike Evans. I think that might have covered the spread, but the game was pretty much the Eagles dominating them. But, I guess the one thing that I was just going to say is this what the Eagles are now? Because the Eagles defense has just been awful all year, dude. Like with Matt Patricia at defensive coordinator, like they've allowed the most touchdowns to wide receivers this year. They were ranking 20th in defensive DVOA versus the pass for majority of the season. And the Bucs, that's really what they were thriving on, is just kind of gunning it to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and really capitalizing on that. And that's kind of what just makes me a little bit worried about this Eagles team. If they're not fully healthy, that it could be a little bit of an uphill battle against this Bucs team.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to stop Mike Evans. And even if they decide they can stop Mike Evans, then they're not going to stop Chris Godwin because they can't stop both of them. So as long as Baker Mayfield doesn't, I don't know another phrase other than probably poop on the floor. I think they're going to put some. I think they're going to put some. Yeah, I think they're going to put some points on the board here. The only thing I will say, and you can look at the numbers, I feel like Baker has played much better on the road than he has at home this season. He has like a bunch of 2 touchdown, no interception games on the road. So maybe that is something, but it feels like a good matchup for Baker as long as he can get healthy, which he'll get the extra day and Philly will too. So should help the offense on both sides.
Well, it correlates because he has 18 touchdowns on the road and 3 interceptions. And when you look at the Bucs ATS record, they're actually, I believe, 6-2 against the spread on the road. So they were much better on the road from an ATS bet standpoint. And the stats from Baker Mayfield align with that. But I have to say, though, again, Baker is the other thing that I would just mention, because the total did go under today. It was a 9-0 win over the Carolina Panthers. The Bucs cover as 4-point favorites. Total of 36.5 does go under. But I wanted to mention this about Baker, where over those last 22 starts, I mean, we're seeing offensive explosions every once in a while from him, but games are still typically going under when he's involved. 15-7 to the under in his last 22 starts. And again, with a 9-0 win over the lowly Panthers, it just feels like one of the most uninspired division title wins I can remember in recent history.
Yeah, and it feels like 44.5 is a little high for Philly, Tampa Bay, depending on what the situation is. But again, there's so much uncertainty. I just don't know if I can kind of have an angle either way there.
So earlier in the year, it was Philly 4.5 with the over-under at 43.5 with the Bucs hosting, and the Eagles won 25-11. Even that one touchdown was Mike Evans there at the end, so nothing of consequence here. But,
obviously.
But again, that's the story of the Bucs. Mike Evans has been unstoppable this year. He's the most profitable anytime touchdown scorer on the Bucs as well. All right, now let's talk about another side of the NFC South. Both of these teams, neither of them making the playoffs, so we won't spend too much time on it. It's more of let's just have a sigh of relief. And it's talking about the Falcons and the Saints. Now, the Saints win easily, put up 49 points today. Saints cover as 3-point favorites. They pretty much almost go over the total by themselves of 42. But coming into the game, Evan, like both teams were last and second last in worst ATS record in the NFL. They were combined 10, 21-1 against the spread. So somebody had to cover in this point. And it's almost funny that Derek Carr probably saved his best game of the year for the last one. And over the last 6 games, I mean, he's kind of balled out. He's had 3 games of 3 touchdowns or more, cut down on the interceptions. But Arthur Smith. So as we're recording this now, it has now just come out that Arthur Smith has been let go of his responsibilities as head coach of the Falcons. And I'm happy about that because I don't want to openly root against a coach, but I was doing that today, man. That 14-play drive to end the third quarter by the Falcons was so dumb, man. They are at the 1-yard line. They have Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. Oh, let's hand it to Cordero Patterson. Now let's try another screen pass. I'm just so glad that the Falcons are not in the postseason, and now they can maybe get a normal offensive coordinator and head coach, maybe even look towards a quarterback that could actually complete a pass. But yeah, Falcons and Saints, I don't really have much more to add to that other than just they were probably two of the most frustrating teams to bet on for me all year. Props, sides, and totals, you name it. They were just always, I go left, they go right.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I don't think I have too much more to add other than these were probably two of the more frustrating teams week in and week out. I think we all kind of said to ourselves, after a win, you stay away from both of them. After a loss, maybe you consider it. And that was kind of the handicap every single week. From the Falcons' point of view, they end the season 5-12 against the spread. Worst record in the NFL. Falcons hadn't lost 12 games against the spread since 1984. Arthur Smith, toast. I think the reason that there's optimism with Smith going out is because there's so many weapons on offense. Listen, if you replace Ritter and we actually get a quarterback in this city, in this place to run this offense, I think it's an interesting handicap. It's the reason we like the Falcons in the preseason because we thought one of these quarterbacks were going to be competent and neither were. Yeah, I mean that was the handicap. I just hope Atlanta doesn't draft Brock Bowers and we can move forward.
I mean, if they did that with already having Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith, don't bring me down that roster malpractice rabbit hole. Can't do that right now. All right, Bears Packers. We don't have to talk too much about the Packers side of things. Packers win 17-9. They clinch their playoff spot, and the total does go under of 46. But I wanted to bring this game up, Evan, because I want to talk about Justin Fields because the Bears get the first overall pick now with the Panthers finishing with the worst record in the NFL. But now we have a few seasons of resume now with Justin Fields as a quarterback. Kind of conflicted. I feel like I see flashes, but then I see a lot of times where I'm just like, oh, we got to move on from this guy. There's no way that you could pay that guy what he's going to ask for, and then you can't franchise tag a quarterback like that either. It would be cap suicide. So again, Justin Fields, 10-28 straight up in his career, 14-23-1 against the spread in his career. There was a streak for a long time where if opponents even scored 20 points, it was pretty much an automatic W for the opponent. So tell me, we don't have to go too deep into it, but should the Bears keep Justin Fields or should they maybe just take Caleb Williams and restart the clock on the salary?
Listen, I hear Chad Millman talk about this every single week for the last 18 weeks. It's been a topic for Chicago. I think this is honestly super, super simple. There's a ceiling with Justin Fields.
Yes.
Is he good? Is he talented? Can they win maybe one playoff game if they kept him? Possibly, sure. But I don't think he's the type of quarterback that's going to take you to where Chicago wants to go. So I think the decision is you get rid of Fields, you bring in someone else. Maybe it is a lot worse. But I'll tell you this, if you keep Fields, I just don't think you get to that point. And I think that's the simple equation. That's the answer. So you probably get rid of him. You probably get a bunch of picks. You probably make the move for, Caleb or something of that nature. And you see how it goes. He might be good. He might be a superstar. He might be Mahomes. He might be this. He might not be. But I think we know what we have with Fields. And I think that's the answer.
I think it's a match made in heaven for him to play in Atlanta. Now that you just brought that up with Brock Bowers and you're thinking about, again, if Arthur Smith was still there in that offensive system with Mariota.
With the enemy. Bring the enemy from Washington to Atlanta. Ooh. Totally turn it around in Washington. He takes the head coach job there. Goes to get Justin Fields, and all of a sudden we're running. I have no idea, but I just thought
especially because Ron Rivera is definitely getting canned in Washington. It's already been reported on that front for the Commanders. So, but yeah, just Justin Fields, I think he could still probably be a decent quarterback somewhere else, but I think his time in Chicago at this point, I think it's ran its course. All right, now let's talk about just AFC North or NFC North. We'll wrap this up here for Vikings Lions. Lions win 30-20. Total does go over. They do cover as 4-point favorites. The total of 47 does go over. Now the Lions, they clinch the 3 seed, so they are going to be hosting Detroit legend and hero Matt Stafford coming back to play with the Rams. Rams-Lions is going to be on Sunday, January 14th. It is going to be the nightcap game at 8 p.m. Eastern. Opening spreads right now, the Lions were up to about 3.5, 4 at some books. It's now down to 3, but the total, sky high, highest total of all the playoff games at 51.5. And the Lions for the year, I mean, just like the Dolphins earlier, like I could point to some duds, that they've had, whatever else. But really, it's just that Ravens game if you really want to find one where it's a glaring loss. But 12-5 straight up, 12-5 against the spread this year. Jared Goff at home, 24-8 against the spread over the last 3 seasons. We have seen what he has done offensively when he is at home or even indoors, rather, compared to outdoors. It's literally night and day. But really the discourse that I took away from this game was, should the Lions even have played their starters? Because they weren't going to move too much farther from second or third in the seeding. But it was such a bummer to lose Sam Laporta the way that they did, especially after him catching a touchdown in the game. And I mean, Dan Campbell's coaching tactics, they've taken a lot of heat recently, man. Like the eligible receiver against the Cowboys, leaving starters in a game that didn't really mean anything. Some of the 4th down calls we've seen this year. So I'm kind of wondering if this might make the Rams a bit of a live dog because of the volatility of maybe some of what we expect from Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I like the hook. If I get the 3.5, I think it's interesting. I think it's 3. It's probably a dead handicap. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong. So Laporta hurt. I believe Raymond hurt as well. So I believe both Lions came out of that a little banged up. You saw it at the end of the game.
Brian Branch,
okay.
their rookie corner as well. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no, that's
a big loss for them.
But you could even tell post game, this was a mean mission for Dan Campbell. He looked angry. Like this was like this. It feels like ever since that Cowboys Lions play, this is just an anger mission for him. Like this is something that he's going to go week in and week out and try to, really dominate his opponents. And we're going to see how it goes. It could backfire at certain points because we've seen him be a little bit too aggressive. But it's worth noting, again, in Detroit, Goff has been just incredibly different indoors. 35-16 against the spread. He's covered 5 straight. Just literally a different quarterback versus him having to go on the road somewhere else. So it's a great thing for Detroit, especially if you're going to be injured going into this game. And I think it's just also, sports are just beautiful, right? I mean, Stafford, we get the game. He finally gets to play a playoff game back in Detroit. It's just beautiful marketing. The NFL gets exactly what it wants. So can't wait for that.
What I think is going to be the real key factor between Rams and Lions is going to be that Lions pass rush. Because remember how we talked about Stafford and when he gets protected? When he gets protected, he looks Hall of Fame. When he doesn't, he looks like the old man falling down on the sidewalk. And
I don't know how how about this? I don't know how you don't bet Aiden Hutchinson getting a sack. Like, I'm going to have to see what those odds come out. Yeah, but even, you assume, I think you're completely right. And I think that type of handicap is probably the right way to go. Even if the Rams get back into the game, it feels like that's, a good handicap.
Yeah, for sure. So if we get us to 3.5, I think that's where you want to go is on the Rams side of things. But 51.5, the way that the unders are trending in this in the NFL this year, you could probably wait closer to kickoff, and you might even see a 49.5 because the public is seeming to be coming along and coming aboard the under train. I feel like for years it always was overs, and maybe that's more of a prop thing, but now public is starting to come around on those unders. Might see that total come down a little bit, and then maybe you want to consider it over in that spot. But I think the Rams are definitely a live dog.
One thing I will say, totals 50 or more since 2018 in the playoffs, 14-6 to the under. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't read. 14-8 to the under, but still,
okay.
Under by 3.4 points per game. So maybe a little inflated.
Yeah, and I mean, I think touchdown scores, you're going to see it too, just from that market where you're going to see probably 4 or 5 guys at minus odds. And whenever that usually happens, an under is very live because you have to start looking now at guys like mid tier for touchdown scores. Like you're going to see 2 or 3 guys on the Lions side and 2 guys on the Rams side that are definitely going to be minus odds, specifically the running backs as well. Let's talk about Seahawks Cardinals quickly. We don't have to go too much into this, but the Seahawks, nice little comeback win. You know, they win 21-20. The total does go under, but they don't cover as 3-point favorites, and the under hits at 47.5. Just a late comeback, a little too late. But the one note I wanted to mention, I posted this online a couple of days ago, was the fun part for me was Tyler Lockett, because he did catch that game-winning touchdown, and just an interesting trend for me. But I put this out there that he had caught a touchdown in 5 years straight in the season finale of the regular season. Well, he caught a touchdown again in week 18, 6 years in a row now that he has caught a touchdown in the final game of the regular season. He's around plus 200. But the Cardinals finished the season around 8-8 against the spread, or 9-8 against the spread. And with that, I think they're going to be a pretty frisky team next year. I think I was pretty impressed with the fact that they brought Kyler back halfway through the year, especially when they were already around like 2-6 and not even close to playoff contention. But those Eagles coordinators, both with the Colts and the Cardinals, I think if you took a step back and just looked at where these teams were projected at the start of the year and where they finished, not bad.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think Arizona's missing a defense. I think that's kind of simple. Week in and week out, no pressure, just too many first downs allowed, too many different things across the board that just made them vulnerable. So I think they do need to make it, just have a better defense to help Kyler and kind of even it out a little bit. Also, they've lost 8 straight games with the NFC West straight up. So it's just, they've struggled a little bit in division. They were 1-13 ATS versus the NFC West entering today. Obviously get the cover, only losing by 1, but just kind of a little bit of a tough run for them. So I think they just need to get a little bit more competitive. Also, just turning it to Seattle for a quick second. Pete Carroll, impressive nonetheless. Like every single year, he figures out a way, no matter who is the quarterback on any of his teams, whether it's Russ or Gino, or even years where he's had to go to backups. 14
Drew
years
Lock.
Seattle, Drew Lock, 9-4-1 over to the over in his win total. Never won less than 7 games. I mean, he's kind of Mike Tomlin-ish in that sense. It's just no matter what, just pencil in Pete Carroll is figuring something out to win 7 or 8 games.
The description that you used earlier of Justin Fields, that's kind of how I feel about Geno Smith too. Like where I kind of know the ceiling. Like I feel like from a talent standpoint, he has a ton of. You like Fields better than Geno? Okay.
Yeah, I think there's more. I think there's more upside. I think with Geno, it's a little. We've seen it. Like I think there's a little more upside with Fields. Where if Fields went somewhere else, maybe there's something else to unlock. I think we've unlocked with Geno. I think we've seen what there is to see there.
Yeah, I was about to say if we haven't peaked yet with Geno, I don't know what's next. All right, there's only a few games left. None of these factored in really to the playoff picture, so we'll go through these pretty quickly. But Broncos Raiders win 24-17. The total does go over 37, and the Raiders do cover as 3-point favorites. Rams 49ers. The Rams do win 21-20. Carson Wentz scores a touchdown for the third straight time against the 49ers in his career. The total does go over of 40, and the Niners lose as 4-point favorites. And then Chiefs-Chargers. Chiefs win 13-12. Total does go under of 35, but the Chargers as 3-point favorites do not win or cover. But finally, Evan, I've been saving this one specifically for you because I wanted to talk about this now. This is the final game we'll talk about. Jets-Patriots. So Jets win 17-3. Total does go under, a historic total, by the way, a total of 29, and it still went under. And the Patriots, as 2-point favorites, lose outright for the first time in 15 games against the Jets. Lucky number 16, as they call it in New York, finally beat the Patriots. Honestly, I feel like the snowball was a little bit wasted on the Jets-Patriots because, like, from a visual standpoint, like, I had my kids watch it and they were just like, wow, like, it looked really cool. And then it's like, yeah, we're probably not going to see a lot of touchdowns in this game. So don't be surprised if it's just a lot of people falling down.
we usually talk about snovers. This wasn't a snover because it can't be a snover with Bailey Zappi and Trevor Siemian. So I'm glad we never even had that discussion. It's probably worth mentioning, closed 28.5, which would be the lowest over under in any game since 1980. And it went under. Shocker. It's also funny. I tweeted this out earlier. So the four lowest totals since 1980, college football and NFL, within the last 10 months. So obviously there's some sort of offense problem across sports. But this was a chess move. This was just funny to me that Belichick is the game that he loses to break the 15-game streak to basically pull the Jets back 5 draft selections. Just a perfect chef's kiss to end it all.
Yeah, we talked about this. I think it was where I was talking about how where he would take Mac Jones out and put Bailey Zappi in for a series at the end of the game kind of thing. These checkers moves that other GMs are making. Bill's over here playing chess, but Bill, is he going to be back with the Patriots next year? I mean, we don't have to go too deep into that kind of conversation, but
sure.
I mean, it was a bad look this year, man. It was a bad look this year, and I'm just not sure that if I'm Robert Kraft, I can give him the keys to the kingdom on drafting the next player here, arguably the next franchise player.
My opinion, I think it's better they go their separate ways. I think Bill could take another job, start fresh,
easily.
maybe put on a pair of shorts, maybe go to the Chargers, something like that. I think Kraft goes somewhere different, starts anew, and Bill does Kraft a favor by getting him the better draft pick. He also turns the Jets clock back, right? Now you can start at 0 and have another coach win 15 straight against the Jets. So I think he did him a favor.
Look at that. Bill Belichick. Saint. Just a Mother Teresa of football, just doing people favors all the time here. All right, so that is week 18 in the books. Now let's check in with Patrick Everson with Vegas Insider to see how Sportsbook's fared in Las Vegas for week 18. Patrick?
Hey, Jill. Thanks for having me on the Action Network podcast for NFL Week 18. Wrapping up NFL Week 18, also looking ahead to Super Wild Card Weekend. An interesting Saturday and Sunday at the books, Jill. Kind of a mixed bag. I think most books overall probably won, but in some cases it wasn't necessarily a whole lot. However, what did contribute to the win was maybe a little bit less the games themselves than some of the futures decisions that arose out of especially Sunday's games and especially the Jaguars-Titans game. There were a couple of odds makers who told me they were upside down to the Jaguars, not only in division futures to win the AFC South, but also with the Jaguars season win total of 9.5. The Jaguars don't win the AFC South, and they don't clear their 9.5 win total. And they said the same situation was true of the Atlanta Falcons with a win total generally of 8.5. The Falcons failed to get to 9 wins with their blowout loss to the Saints. So those two decisions in particular helped make it a better day for a few Vegas odds makers and probably some odds makers across the country. Some interesting tidbits. There was a lot of action on the bet of no touchdowns, and different books placed this in different categories. Some of them had no touchdowns scored in the first player to score a touchdown. Some of them had anytime touchdown, and you could choose no. Well, a lot of people chose no in that Jets-Patriots game, including me at plus 1740. Could have been diving into a ton of Chili's money and bottomless chips and salsa, but Breece Hall had to rip off that late touchdown run and break my heart and take a big win away from me. And probably a lot of other people, and probably a bigger win for others because I'm just betting #Chili's money. But yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then, of course, the Bills-Dolphins game, that was the biggest game of the week for sure. And most books definitely needed the Dolphins in this game. So the fact that the Bills got there, won, and covered took away from their bottom line a little bit. And like I said, it was kind of a mixed bag. That may have even made it a losing weekend for some books. And in fact, one odds maker told me our weekend comes down to the last game. We need Miami, especially in the futures market. They saw multiple 5-figure wagers on the Bills to win the division title, the AFC East. Again, kind of talking about this whole thing with the Jags and the Falcons and so forth, division titles and season win totals. He said a Miami win would make our weekend. They did not get the Miami win, nor did they get a Miami cover. Now, Moving along to Super Wild Card Weekend, because I'm generous of heart, even very late on a Sunday night as I speak to you, I'm going to spin you through all 6 games real quick with one Vegas odds maker I spoke with about what happened. Browns are the first game out of the gate against the Houston Texans. It's a rematch of a game a couple of weeks ago, but the Texans were without C.J. Stroud in that game. Browns on the road again. They were on the road the last time as well in a pretty easy victory. Browns open -1.5. Already up to 2.5 with this odds maker. And that the odds maker said, I think that's a result of the market not typically trusting a rookie quarterback in this situation. Also, the success rate of a rookie quarterback, rookie head coach in the postseason is pretty low. And he said the market tends to bet against that. Dolphins against the Chiefs on Saturday night. Opens Chiefs -3.5, stays Chiefs -3.5. And the odds maker noted when these two teams played in Germany, it actually closed Dolphins -1. Remember, the Chiefs won that game 21-14. But he said, this ain't that game, and it's going to be freezing cold. He said the wind chill could be below 0. That's not Dolphins weather. You got a QB from Hawaii who's never started a playoff game against a guy who's played a zillion of these cold home playoff games. And so that's certainly an issue there. Remember, in last year's playoffs, Miami went up to Buffalo and I believe had a backup quarterback in that game. Steelers against the Buffalo Bills. That's the opening game on Sunday. This game opens Bills 10. Actually went down to Bills 9.5. The odds maker said we were looking for a nibble at 10 and we got it. They were hoping to see a little bit of sharp play and they did. Double digits in a playoff game. He said that tends to be something that the wise guys are looking for. However, he still expects the public to very much get involved on Buffalo and expects that the book is going to need the Steelers in this game for sure. Packers and Dallas in the middle game of the Sunday sandwich of wildcard weekend games. And this game opens Dallas -7.5. He said there was a little bit of debate on the open number, but Dallas plays very well at home. And he said he would expect the public to be all over Dallas, even though Jordan Love has looked good. Remember, he is a first-year full-time starter. He said, I would be very surprised if we don't actually need Green Bay outright in this game. And I don't think anybody else would be surprised if they need Green Bay outright as well. Rams against Detroit on Sunday night. Opens Lions, I should say, -3, -120. Still -3, -120. And the reason they went 3 -120 instead of going right to 3.5, the odds maker said, I think that would be inviting the wise guys on the dog right out of the gate. He said it's hard to know how the public is going to bet this, but he thinks the public is going to be on Detroit. And at the very least, you got 3 games on Sunday, and the first 2 teams he noted are pretty sizable favorites. So it's pretty easy to put your money line parlay together. Buffalo to Dallas to Detroit equals profit. We'll see if it actually equals profit. The NFL sometimes tends to think otherwise, NFL betting. And then the Monday night game to wrap it all up on Super Wildcard Weekend, you got the Eagles at the Buccaneers. The Eagles are absolutely reeling, but they open -2, already up to 2.5. And the odds maker said we took sharp action on Philadelphia -2 on Sunday night. But he thinks this spread is going to stay right in this range, 2.5. He said, I would be surprised if it got to 3 because Philly is playing so bad right now. I noted Tampa doesn't look very good either, but he thinks bettors are probably going to hold their nose and take the Eagles in this game. So there you have it, a little look back at NFL Week 18, wrapping up how things went for some of the books in that final week of the regular season, and a look ahead to all 6 Super Wildcard Weekend games and opening odds and a little bit of early activity and so forth, because I am full service, Gilles. Have a good week.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for listening to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. Enjoy a nice little Monday break from football and keep an eye out for all of our NFL Wildcard Weekend podcasts right here on the Action Network.